Your medical school interview, one of the most important interviews you'll ever partake in that could be worth up to 100% of your total score. Yeah, once at the interview stage, some schools actually drop their other selection factors like GPA and MCAT score. Either way, your interview can make or break your chances of acceptance, so you have to make sure you're well prepared. That's going to be the topic of today's video. I'm going to break down how you should prepare for your med school interview, before the interview, and on the day of the interview. And I'm also going to answer some of your frequently asked questions surrounding the interview. Hi everyone, I'm Nadine Evans with BeMo Academic Consulting. Be sure to subscribe on whatever social media channel you're watching this from so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you want us to help you ace your medical school interview, go to BeMo.blog to schedule your free initial consultation. Okay, so let's get straight into what you need to do before the interview. First and foremost, get in touch and respond to your interview requests immediately. A lot of schools send out more interview requests than available spots, so be sure you confirm your plan to attend straight away. The speed in which you reply to your interview is also an indication of your level of interest for a particular school. So if you don't reply promptly, you'll be giving the incorrect impression that you're not really interested in the school or the program. The next step, if it wasn't already included in your interview package, is to find out what type of interview you'll be participating in. So this information is essential because in order to prepare effectively, you need to make sure that you're preparing properly. An MMI, for example, is very different to a panel interview or even a traditional interview. So you'll need to know ahead of time so you can prepare appropriately. If this information wasn't included and you can't find it on the school's website, you can sign into the Medical School Admissions Requirements (MASAR) website and look under Selection Factors. Okay, so once you've determined your interview format, it's time to practice. Now, not all practice is good practice, so make sure you're practicing in the best way possible, which is with sample questions and real-life mock interviews. So sample questions are a great start as these will give you an idea of some of the common question types to expect. And they can get you brainstorming some ways in which you can best answer them according to your own experiences. But the truth is, no amount of practice questions can compare to doing a full-length mock interview with personalized feedback. This is the only way to feel what it will be like during the actual interview. You'll experience stress, uncertainty, and maybe even fear, but it's great to get these emotions out of the way and under control early on. A big part of these emotions have to do with not knowing what to expect. By doing these mock interviews, you'll actually have an idea of what to expect, and so you can feel a sense of familiarity, which will bring some comfort in the actual interview. Now make sure that you're also receiving personalized feedback related to your answers. This is the only way to know if you're answering the questions appropriately and to the best of your ability. This feedback will also give you insight into your strengths and weaknesses and can also eliminate some of your responses that may bring up red flags, something that's hard to identify on your own and without the help of an expert. So lastly, these mock interviews with expert feedback will help you to answer any question that you may encounter during your interview, no matter the type or the difficulty. The next important step to take when preparing for your med school interview is to know yourself inside and out. It may seem silly, but let me tell you, to prepare and do well in your interview takes a lot of self-reflection. Have you been asked a personal question before and felt stunned, unsure how to answer it? It can be really hard for us to look deep into ourselves to determine why we do the things we do and what motivates us. It's a skill that takes some time to develop, and so make sure you start with this early on. You'll be faced with questions during your interview such as, tell me about yourself and why do you want to be a doctor? So you need to be able to understand your own motivations before you'll be able to tell other people. These questions in particular are nearly impossible to answer on the spot. Well, I should say to answer well on the spot. So think about these questions and others early on. And if you're having trouble, try chatting with family and friends because sometimes they can identify skills and qualities in us that we can't even identify ourselves. The next important thing I should tell you is that you should not memorize your answers. This is one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you. There are still some students that think that if they memorize their answers to a million different questions, there's no way they can be put off or caught off guard by a question. Well, this is simply not true, and to be honest, this technique almost always backfires. A canned response will always seem fake, and the admissions committee are interviewing hundreds of applicants each and every year. They can 100% tell the difference between someone who just memorized an answer and someone whose answer is genuine and dynamic. Now, that's not to say that a memorized answer isn't true, but unfortunately, it just doesn't come across the way that students hope. The other problem with memorizing answers is that it opens up a can of worms when it comes to memory blank. When we're nervous, we forget things. So if you miss a line or a paragraph from a memorized, paragraph or answer, it becomes extremely difficult to get back on track and deliver the rest of the memorized piece without further issues. Similarly, if your memorized answer is to a specific question and you're actually given a variation of the question or one that you didn't expect, that memorized piece is going to be super inappropriate, but it's all that you're going to have. So memorized answers tend to be very rigid and they can block out natural thought. So instead of doing this, think of some important points or topics that you'd like to include in your answer. When you practice answering the question, you'll notice that these main topics are there, but your answer should actually vary slightly in the length and content. That's a good thing and it's what you want. The next thing you need to do is to read endlessly. Everything from the school's mission statement and core values to hot topics in the field of medicine. Learn everything you can about the school first. You need to be able to demonstrate why you want to attend a specific school as opposed to another one. And to do this, you need to know all about the school. While you're doing this, always look to be connecting back to your own interests and passions. Next, you need to get onto the news. Even if you're not really a big news person and you don't really like following it, it's expected that you will be up to date on current events and popular topics in the field of medicine. So whether it could be, a topic related to medicinal marijuana or a new discovery in the field, you need to know all about it and you need to be able to formulate opinions on the subject matter. Okay, so we've covered some important things that you need to do before your medical school interview. Now let's talk about what to do on the actual day of your interview. Number 1, be keen and arrive early. This is so important, not only just to be professional, but also to save yourself a lot of stress. You should make sure that you arrive to the location of your interview a day early because this actually gives you a chance to explore the campus, find your exact interview room, and figure out your route there, parking, all those other factors. It also gives you a chance to settle in and get a good night's sleep the night before. So on your actual interview day, you should aim to arrive 20 to 30 minutes before registration opens. If you're driving yourself, allow more time for navigation and finding parking. So being early gives you some wiggle room in case there was any unexpected slowdowns from leaving your accommodation to arriving at the interview. The next step to acing your interview is to dress appropriately. We have a medical school interview attire blog that will tell you everything you need to know about how both men and women should dress on their interview day. I've added a link for this below into the description, but in general, you need to dress professionally. Showing up in jeans and a tank top is not only inappropriate, but it also shows that you don't really care about the interview and you're not really taking it seriously. The next tip I have for you is to be friendly and respectful to everyone that you meet. As soon as you step foot onto the campus, you need to be on. So there are eyes and ears everywhere, and anyone on campus has the ability to report unprofessional behavior. So be nice, smile, say please and thank you. If you have an MMI, you also need to remember your manners when you're dealing with an acting or collaboration station. Even if an actor is portraying a belligerent character, or if you have to work with a difficult student, make sure that you always keep your cool and respect the thoughts and opinions of others, even if you don't agree with them. It's also important to make excellent first and last impressions. These are the things that stick. It's just how our brains work, so you need to make sure that you nail them both. Introduce yourself, make eye contact, shake hands, smile, and try to remember your evaluator's name. Don't worry if you're terrible with names. It's just if you happen to be able to remember them, it's kind of a nice touch when you're doing your closing. So when you leave, make sure you thank them for their time. Again, smile, eye contact, and leave with your head held high. The final day of interview tip that I can give you is to ask for clarification. So sometimes we hear back from our students and they tell us that they wish they had asked for clarification on a question, but they were too nervous to do so. Don't be nervous. If you read something or if you're asked something and you don't understand, simply ask for more clarification. It's a lot worse to go through an answer and then have the interviewer say that that wasn't what they asked for, or to have an MMI evaluator mark you poorly because you failed to grasp the concept of a question. Okay, so the last part of this video is that I want to cover just a couple of your frequently asked questions. So the first one that we get often is, will I be asked about an area of poor academic performance? So the answer to this totally depends on whether or not the interview is open or closed book. If it's an open book interview, then yes, you will most likely be asked about a poor performance, but that's okay. Just be honest about the circumstances that led to the performance and make sure that you're taking responsibility for it. Be sure that you're owning it without being defensive or making excuses. The next common question we get asked is, who will my interview be with? So this totally depends on the interview type. It could be faculty members, members of the student body, upper year medical students, or even practicing professionals. Keep in mind that whoever you do meet with doesn't necessarily have a background in the medical field. Another question we get asked is, how should I schedule my interviews? So if you're lucky enough to have a handful of interviews, knowing where to slot them can be a little bit tricky. It's always a good idea to schedule the interviews that are at the bottom of your list first. So this way you can go through the process, get some of the nerves out, and if you make mistakes, it's no biggie because those weren't your top choice schools anyway. So this brings me to the next point. Place your most important interviews, aka your top choice schools, in the middle of the interview cycle. So this way you'll have some experience by the time you get to these interviews, and if you made any mistakes early on, you'll have the chance to learn from them. In the middle of the interview cycle, you and the evaluators will still be fresh and excited for interviews. As you move towards the end of the interview cycle, it's easy to become fatigued. It's really an exhausting process, especially if you have a lot of interviews, so make sure you put those important ones in the middle. Okay, so hopefully you're feeling a lot more confident in your preparation for your interviews. So please subscribe, like, and leave a comment if you have any questions that we can help you with. If you want us to help you prepare for your upcoming interview, go to BeMo.blog to schedule your free initial consultation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.